Hi, my name's Father Mike Schmitz. Just kind of a little background. I might have mentioned this before, but when we first started Ascension Presents, actually when Ascension first started Ascension Presents, and they came to me and said, would you be willing to make these videos? Why? Well, because everyone's living on YouTube and everyone has these, isolated moments where they just kind of watch or listen to whatever they want on YouTube. And we want to bring the gospel to the YouTube. Like, great, that's awesome. And then what we found was people were watching and listening, but then also people were bringing them into the classroom. And so we thought, that's really cool. Let's help those people in the classroom use the videos that were made for one-on-one be more for a larger group or a small group. And so the first thing I want to say is, if you have this, you're one of those leaders, right? You're one of those teachers. How can you best use these tools with the small group questions, with the commentary, with the kind of the bullet points, with the opening and closing prayer, with the activities, with all those things? How can you best use them in your classroom? Well, first of all, disclaimer: you're the teacher, you're the leader, you are the catechist, youth minister. You know how to teach, or you know your students. Even if you're like, I don't teach super well, I'm a volunteer. That's why we have the videos, because you're the teacher, Father Mike. Like, okay, that's great, maybe. But you know your students. Like, you know where they're coming from. You know where they're at. And you know probably where you want them to go, or where God's calling them to grow. You're kind of entrusted, not kind of, you are entrusted with their care. And because of that, because you know them, because you care about them, have been entrusted with their care, my guess is you might know what's going to work best for them that I wouldn't necessarily know, because I don't know your students. So I want to let you know, we trust that you're going to use this resource in a way that most helps the most number the most. There's always opportunity for discussion, right? I mean, that's kind of a given when it comes to presenting things like this video in a classroom. Here's how I always like to look at this, and I got this from running kind of a small group discussion kind of thing here on the campus, is that when we ever present a video or have a presentation, that's when we tell them what we believe. When it comes to the small group time, our motto is, and I got this from someone else, but our motto is, the small group time is where they tell us what they believe. And I like dividing it up in that kind of a context, or that kind of a understanding. So the video is where we tell them what we believe. So there's the video, Why Be Catholic and Not Just Christian? Well, this is where we tell them what we believe. The discussion time gets to be where they tell us what they believe or what they think. And to see it in those terms, as opposed to we want them to, because here's the deal, I want them to believe what we believe, right? We want all people in the world to become Catholic Christians. That's kind of the goal of the whole deal. That's why we make the videos. But at some point we have to meet them where they're at, right? And in the classroom, to communicate to them very, very clearly that during the video, this is where Father Mike tells you what we as the Catholic Church believes in his particular way. In the small group, in this discussion, we just want to hear what it is that you believe. And also tell us why you believe this, because I think Father Mike did his best to tell you not only what we believe, but also why we believe it. So in this small group, please tell us what you think and why you think it. But that would be really important. But to have that freedom to be able to do this, because that one time you meet with them with the video is not the only time you're meeting with them. You're going to continue meeting with them to research, to ask questions, to think about these things. And if they're not thinking about them and aren't able to express what they truly think, or even are helped to learn how to convey why they think what they think, then they're never going to come to the place where they are able to say, oh, here, even if they came to faith, they won't be able to say, oh, here's why I believe now what the church teaches. So during the video, that's where we get to tell them what we believe. In the small group, that's where they get to tell us what they believe. Another thing I like to do, and it just passes on to you as leaders, is I'm a big believer in kind of what you call the one-point sermon, one-point homily, one-point talk. Now, I'm a believer in it in the sense that I really like the idea. I'm not necessarily a practitioner always. But one of the reasons I like it is because I like the theory of it, at least, is because it's far easier to remember one point than it is to remember the next 5 points. Now, there might be some videos here that they're looking at this like, there's a lot of points, Father, so where's your whole one-point deal? But what I invite you to do is to invite your students to say, okay, what's the one point? What's the one takeaway? Like, what's the one thought from this video that either you found challenging? What's the one thought from this video that you didn't know? What's the one thought or one point from this video that you want to remember? So whenever I'm in prayer with our students here on campus, I'm always asking them in prayer at the end of it, say, okay, write one thought down that you want to carry with you for the rest of the day. I always say that at the end of every prayer time. What's one thought from this prayer time, one thing from this prayer time that you want to carry with you for the rest of the day? That could be one thing. After the discussion, after the presentation, in your context, to be able to ask them, what's one thing from this time that you want to carry with you for the rest of the day, for the rest of this week? Another thing I would say is, what's one question? I mean, I kind of mentioned some of those other, but what's one question you have now from the presentation and from our shared discussion when we're not given the chance to formulate our questions, or not even given encouragement to formulate our questions? We just kind of end up with this kind of generalized, I don't know-ness. But if you're given an opportunity and direction to say, okay, what's one question that you like an answer to following this presentation and this discussion, that would hone it in and be able to say, okay, now where are you going to go to ask that question and to find an answer? And maybe lastly from this is just kind of a tip. It's something I really like doing when it comes to the people I'm working with. And that is, after we had our presentation, after we had the discussion, how would you communicate this to someone that you actually know as they actually are? What I mean is, sometimes we would say, well, how would you teach what we just talked about? So someone would say, well, I'd press play on the video. Or they might say, I would say exactly what Father Mike said. Or they would say, I would say it differently to some generalized audience. I'd say, no. How would you communicate what the church teaches about this to your mom, to that one guy in your classroom, or that one girl in your grade, or your little brother? Like, pick somebody. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't have to be like the most challenging person. It could just be like, how would you teach this to someone else? Because we're called upon to know how to articulate the faith, right? And yet, if I say I can articulate the faith to this nameless, faceless, I don't know who they are person, out there, well, I don't really know how. But if I can put a name to the person I want to communicate this to, or a face, a heart, right? Realizing that it's not just an intellectual argument, but I'm trying to win them over, not just win an argument. So one of the assignments I like to give is pick someone in your life that you know. How would you say this or teach this to them? And let your students wrestle with that, realizing that I wouldn't just say all the facts. I would have to be really delicate in this area. I could be more blunt in that area. Anyways, these are some of my tips that I just invite you, as you use these videos, keep those things in mind, and maybe they will be helpful for you and for all the people you're working with. And God bless you and what you're doing, and helping people come to know Jesus and His church better.